All right, so Fulcrum of Truth, episode 12.
Yeah, welcome back.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a couple days.
Yeah.
Just want to send a thank you out to everybody who's been watching and subscribed, and like, comment, subscribe on this video too, please.
Yeah.
And today I think we're going to talk about, Gary actually picked the topic today.
It wasn't me. It actually wasn't me. It was a guy from the chat room I hang out in with the guys. They, one of the homies said, we were talking about where thoughts come from, and Tesla and Einstein, and how everybody has this topic of where thoughts come from. And I told him, hey, that sounds like a great topic for the next episode. So now we're here.
Yeah. Usually I kind of think up and kind of push the direction here, but today Gary came to me with this idea of where do ideas come from?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I haven't given this question a lot of thought personally. But so why don't you start, and then maybe that'll trigger some things with me. I have been thinking about some aspects of that, but
Yeah.
it's hard to describe.
Well, what's really intriguing to me, and what has me so interested in this idea, right? I mean, all the greater scientists and inventors of the past, they all talk about where they don't know how ideas come to them, and these great ideas they have, like what sparks them, because they kind of come out of nowhere. I think Einstein even, or Tesla had exclaimed one time in his writings that he thought it was another dimension of people that were kind of passing him information, which is a wild idea.
Sometimes it feels like that.
Yeah. So, it does feel like that. So we can kind of understand him saying that, right? Now, what's really interesting to me, though, is not so much the rhetoric or writings of like former geniuses and science pioneers and stuff, but more so the evidence that lays in all of the understanding spread across the different cultures over the past 2,000 years that are very collective in nature. And they're very similar in nature. The existential, esoteric type philosophies that people had when we talk about Thoth with the Emerald Tablets, and we talk about Hermetic principles and Hermes, and we talk about the I Ching and Buddhist and all these philosophies,
Yeah, and I said this in a previous episode where it makes much more sense for the ancients to have been a large colony of people, right? And I use the example of relativity, where one guy figured out relativity and they shared it with everybody. It doesn't make sense that each of these individual cultures came up with that on their own. It all came from one place.
Yeah.
To me.
Now I will say, so I'm actually bringing up a little contrary point to that. So
Okay.
that, when we talk about the sciences or like mathematics or, technologies that a civilization might have, I agree with you that this is more so likely one person invents this technology or comes into this understanding, and then it gets spread. When it comes to the science and the tangible things about civilization and life, right? But what I was more so talking about is the philosophy type stuff, the prophetic stuff about gods, and like the Hermetic principles, right? The oneness and the single consciousness of all human beings, and the fact that we can meditate our way into another consciousness, essentially, and that what we see and feel around us is not the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
These principles that are contained within the Thoth Emerald Tablets and Hermetic principles, and even Buddhist, Taoism, and Hinduism, all of them. This understanding that's written throughout all of them is very similar, and it all came from people that were essentially touched by the universe. Like the authors of these books, the prophets that we've had. This was not information or technology that was kind of passed along. This was usually a story about how a person looked at a star or looked at a tree or went through an event in their life where they had this huge, opening and gaining of wisdom from the universe, that
realization or enlightenment.
Yeah, a day of enlightenment, exactly. This enlightenment brings the same package of knowledge to all these people. And I've talked to you, and I'll tell everybody listening that I myself have experienced that, and that's kind of where this understanding comes from. That I was fortunate enough to, get blasted with understanding in an instance that felt like a lifetime, and came with, the inability to deny it. It was like truth just given. And when I began writing the book and we started working on the science, it was after a year that we began to find these books and these other authors of this exact same information that we were delving into. And I think that that is incredibly, strong evidence for a collective of information that can be tapped into by all human beings, and that, that ideas can come from some external ether or external force, Long-winded, but that's like fine.
No, I agree with you that, and I guess I want to say that, like I mentioned, I haven't thought a lot about this. So I think there's kind of two schools of thought. There's the school of thought where you make observations, kind of the scientific method, where you make observations and then you create a hypothesis and a theory and then you kind of structure it together. But even then, when you make these observations, where do you get the idea to come up with the hypothesis?
Yeah.
Okay? That doesn't just, it seems to just come from nowhere.
It does. It does. And I've thought about internal and external, right? Like this is one way to kind of go into the conversation in looking at the idea that, is this a information that's outside of us in some type of frequency, in some type of force that can be picked up as information? And do we have like antennas that kind of pick it up from the outside of us and it's all around us at all times and we're connected with it and other people at once, right? Or internal, where it's kind of stuck in our DNA, that everything that our ancestors have ever learned and done in the past gets passed on in an informational subconscious sense in our minds. And then when we, as our body in our life, we might see an object or a shape or a movement of two things together or a concept, right? And it will maybe spark the internal memory of it. And you have this idea, like, it seems like a new idea that nobody told me about this wheel, but 10,000 years ago they had a wheel, and now I can remember that because it's inside of my DNA from that time, but I don't really connect it that way,
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up this idea of a universal consciousness, and you actually introduced something to it right there that I had not considered, which was the element of time, that even past lives and past consciousness can be flowing through us and tapped into and available. And our ability to intentionally tap into that is there, although it seems out of reach.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just reaches out to us, or it feels like it just reaches out to us.
That's Beasley, by the way.
Yeah.
I actually, in everything that I have found so far, it seems accidental every time. That,
But do you believe in accidents?
Well, I'll explain it to you like this. All of the work that I do every day is through a flow state where I'm essentially, analogy would be like I'm uncapping the back of my brain and allowing the universe to go in, and then it just flows right out of my mouth and my mind and my ideas and notes and all that stuff without me necessarily considering it. I'm trying to filter it as little as possible with my human self, right? I just want it to flow right through me and me be like, whoa, what is this in front of me, basically. That's the goal. To do that, you have to attempt to not do it, and that sounds crazy. Right? It sounds absolutely crazy, but it's the truth. Like, I guess
it's like meditation.
Yeah, but it's like when you meditate and you tell somebody, yeah, clear your mind. And try to clear your mind.
How do you tell somebody clear your mind?
How you tell them to do it, but you never give them instructions how to do it, and I've talked about this before. But the real thing is it is a skill, learning how to let go of desire. And that's kind of where it comes from, to let go of the desire. For example, I was just working on designing that computer, a new computer based on a different bit system that has never been done before, right? And this is a large task. I mean, designing a computer from scratch, it's difficult. And after about 2 or 3 days, because we're jumping around here, but we found that system in our manuscript and what we're working on, and I was like, man, this can probably make a computer. And then I began designing the computer, right, and doing research on all the gates and everything, and making one from a circuit board level. But then after 2 or 3 days of struggling with it, I realized I was forcing. I was trying to make something happen with what I found. You know what I mean? And I had found this through not trying to find it or do whatever with it. And I had to take a step back and say, you know what? And this is kind of my thought, my path of work is I'm not going to solve it by forcing it. I could spend the next 10 years here fighting to make this and never get it. The way I get things done is by stepping back and saying, no, I'm forcing it. Let me go back to something that feels natural. I hop back on a manuscript. I start drawing some triangles and just like, yeah, it's about not forcing it. So what I mean to say there, let me bring it to a circle there. When you attempt to seek this enlightenment, when you attempt to do this, it doesn't seem to work. It happens by the flow state, by accidentally stumbling on it.
I think a lot of people are very successful by forcing it.
Very.
That motivates other people to try to force it.
Sure. You being one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been a creator of everything that you have right now. You've worked to create it. It's been forced on. It's not like you're sitting back letting it all happen to you. You've made choices that have led yourself to this position. You know?
I've taken steps to adjust that a
but you
little
also
bit because I see it.
Yeah, you also have felt some too. I mean, that's how you kind of, I'm sure that it's a balance, right? It's a little bit of feel and a little bit of decision-making, logic, reason, you know? But I was a victim of my success, right? So it's like if you're doing bad things and you're able to survive and make choices and keep going and everything and be successful, in the end, you're going to fail even harder. And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, ideas, I don't think you get them from trying. You know, it's more of a luck and stumbling on accidentally type thing.
Yeah, and I'm struggling to come up with an example right now, but it's just, you know, even something as simple as, oh, I'd like to do this today. Whatever it is. I think I will go for a run. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Right? Where does that motivation, where does that idea come from? How does it pop into your mind? Is it simply a result of what's been fed into you and subconscious processing? And maybe
that's what I was going to say.
There is a subconscious mind, right? Or we think there's a subconscious mind. And these inputs are processing within that subconscious mind that we're not aware of, and then they pop out.
Yeah.
That would be one theory.
Yeah. Kind of, I think that's agreed upon. Like, well, if we talked about it in an academic setting, it would probably be very acceptable to be talking about how the childhood memories and everything they experienced in their life growing up to that point kind of leads to that.
It's agreed upon, or somewhat agreed upon, but is it right?
I mean, I can promise you it's not right after what we've been through and what we've been working on. Like, I mean, Dave, you do realize, and I think you do, but people at home don't, that's watching, like, the research that we're doing and the stuff we work on, those projects, they came out of thin air. Like, the direction that guided us to these things came from the ether. It came from, there was no book I read, there was no person I talked to, there was no video I watched, there was no anything. I was sitting there in front of my computer talking to people about random things, and then all of a sudden, finding the manuscript is kind of insane, the fact that we're working with that manuscript, but it was a series of coincidences, basically, and accidental discoveries that led to it.
Yeah, and that wasn't even day one.
What do you mean?
I mean, day one was...
You might remember
so
even different
far,
than me, you know?
So far away from all of that. Where did we even start? I think we started with...
It was me talking to the people online.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It really was. It really did start with that, and it really started with...
that miracle taking place. Like, something was happening in terms of psychology with these people.
We started on psychology.
Yeah.
We started on...
Yeah. I wrote 150 points to find a very intelligent frontal lobe activated person.
Yeah, like, where do people's feelings come from? Well,
maybe we can go into that. You know, this would be I mean, I'd love to relive it real quick and talk about what happened. And because we haven't really gone over that. I just remembered, just like you did, that it started with talking to people, you know. this all, my whole enlightenment journey. So if, yeah, we're talking about where ideas come from. I'll explain where
Sure.
mine came from, right? So I was dealing with severe depression and basically had given up on life. You know what I mean? I had no desire to live anymore. I didn't want to commit suicide. I have children, so I had to stick around for them and, like recover and figure out how to get back. But I had, knew that was going to be years down the road, so there was nothing to do that day. And I just had given up completely. And, but I wanted to get better. You know what I mean? I didn't want to stay like that. You know what I mean? I was searching. The definition of insanity, like everybody knows, is repeat the same thing expecting a different result, right? So I knew that I had to do something different than just sit there if I wanted to move forward in life at all, So to do that, to get the desire back, I went through psychotherapy. I worked with a psychologist for 18 months, right? 2 times a week, 2 hours each session. And the goal of psychotherapy is self-actualization. Okay, so that's just the goal of presenting yourself in the world and being in the world and seeing the way you want to be seen. Right, so you're not out of control, basically. So, but the way you do that, the way to path to self-actualization is by triggering different perspectives. So a psychologist will sit there and just present you with a bunch of different ideas and a bunch of different perspectives and keep feeding you different ideas and this story and that story and this, right? And to get you to try and trigger a new perspective on what you're looking at. Because right now, when you're in that state, you're narrowed in on that dark, depressed viewpoint. And you can't see it from any other way. So he's trying to get you to break open from there. I learned that from him, but it wasn't working. I wasn't able, we're working together and I was only spending 4 hours a week with him. Well, there's a lot more than 4 hours in a week, right? So I want to do more work. Because I don't want to wait that long to get better. If I can spend more hours working on psychotherapy, then I want to. So I got other counselors. I began treating it like psychotherapy. But then I still couldn't get enough time with people, and I went online, and I started talking to people online. And that's where the journey began. I figured I'm going to search out new information, and that new information that I encounter is going to trigger a new perspective. Okay. Now, when I began talking to people, the most uncanny, weird thing happened where in the first night that I was talking to random people online, video chatting with them, I met someone that felt the exact same way that I did about the world. Okay. And I had been searching for that my whole life. I felt a lot of people feel this, right? This is not, and maybe not a lot, but there's a select few. There's a select people that are, a lot of them are highly intelligent.
I think it's more than you imagine.
Yeah, probably. And they feel alone because they feel different or something. And they don't feel like they connected with anybody. And the line basically goes that you've never been able to find somebody in your whole life that feels the exact same way that you do about the world. Okay. And I was able to find someone that did. And after 6 hours of talking to this person, shout out to Corey, all right? This was, you guys see me with the beard and, you know what I mean? I'm like your average white male, okay? And heterosexual and all this. And, I hunted and you see me. I'm like a caveman, basically, right? But Corey was a 19-year-old black homosexual boy from Las Vegas who lived with a racist white grandfather. And he was sitting in his kitchen wearing roller skates, petting his dog when I met him, right? And you would think us two are not going to have that much in common or that much to talk about. But after 6 hours of talking to this guy, we were the exact same person. And it just triggered something in me, it taught me something, and it gave me hope. Wow, I met somebody that's just like me. Next night I go on there, I meet another girl that's exactly like me, and we talk for 4 or 5 hours, and it just blows my mind. And I'm like, wow, now I've found 2 people that I could never find my entire life. What's going on here, And I began searching for more people and talking to more people, and it became almost like an addiction. And all of a sudden, when I began touching people and began everybody, I was helping them. They were helping me. I was learning things. I was gaining this weird psychological ability to understand how these people were feeling and identify the people that were like me. Now, that's when I called you.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, at this point, I think you're batshit crazy.
Yeah. Definitely.
But I love you.
Yeah.
And
we worked together for 3 years. I did a lot of nice projects for you, so it's
right. And I know you, and I know oh man, okay, you're going through a tough time. How can I be there for you?
I love you for that. This dude, guys, really, didn't think anything was going on. I thought I was crazy and was still came to just be with me to fucking make sure I was okay with it. Man, man, you know what it is, Dave. I'll do anything for you, bro. That's really nice. And to hear that.
But I suck it out.
I know. And it turned out to be worth it, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So over time, so Dave would get online and we would stream call and I would share my screen and he would just kind of, while he was working, he would watch me while I was talking to people.
Just be there. Yeah. Just be there for you.
Yeah. And in the beginning, I think it was just him being there, like being like, all right, not going to be alone while he's going through this crazy episode.
Yeah.
But then I think you started paying attention to some of the conversations and you must have seen something eventually that was like kind of
I don't know. I think it was the second phase where I really got interested.
When I found the numbers and stuff, the manuscript.
I think it was
the books,
Renaissance art.
Oh yeah.
Right. That was phase 2 where you started going into, and at that point I was like, oh man.
Well, I would say
he's having a real manic episode.
Well, second was the book. So I wrote the first 300 pages of the book before I began chasing down.
But again, at that point, I'm completely dismissing it. Just kind
writing a crazy book. Yeah.
Look, I just need to be here for him, make sure he's okay, and make sure if he needs something, I'm here. Yeah. I'll do my work. I'll be linked up with him if you need something.
Oh my God, it's so nice. I'm talking to 100 people a day, coming to Dave talking about,
and I'm just like, person. Okay, yep.
I'm discovering this is a miracle, Dave. I'm like freaking out with him, you know what I mean? But yeah, through that period of time of talking to people and talking to you, I think it was in the first 3 months was when I had my first moment where it wasn't, I talk about meeting God. It wasn't that. It was the Fulcrum essentially came to me, right? It was like embedded into my head. I kind of had it was sort of like a seizure, I guess you could say, right? It was crazy. I guess I'll describe it.
We need to get her out of here.
Sure, let her go. People love the cat.
All right.
So, yeah, we're mine, right? No. So the thing is, I had that. That was when I had the first overwhelming experience of emotion, right? So this is a very detailed description of what it felt like and what it feels like to become enlightened. Okay, so I was just sitting there and it feels like a wave coming over you, like a wave of water, right? And goes across your whole body, and then every emotion that a person can have, happiness, sadness, excitedness, fear, panic, aggression, everything that you can feel as a human body emotionally is going off at the exact same time. 30 emotions at once, all peaked at the top red limiter of what they can be and getting ready to bust, and your body feels like it's going to explode. At the same time, I began hyperventilating, like, and like that's exactly what it is. Trying to breathe and couldn't breathe. And began crying. So you begin crying, and this lasts about 10 or 15 seconds until it waves away the same way it comes in. And at that point, when I had the first time it happened, it was like the image of the fulcrum was seared into my head, essentially just a balance beam with a point in the center with the two opposite singularities. And then it came with the image was burned and the understanding was burned of emotion and reason are the same thing on two sides of a spectrum of judgment, and that chaos and order are the two equal and opposite things on the universe. That they're the same thing. Chaos and order are two equal and opposite things on the same spectrum. That chaos is within order, order is within chaos, and the whole world changed when that understanding came. It came like that, and I began writing the book.
Yeah. And I want to put out there that I know there could be a doctor watching this, or a person who moonlights as a doctor and thinks that, oh, this is a psychotic break.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit here. I hate to be so definitive, but you're wrong.
Wow. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. Because what we have accomplished since then. And I'm no doctor. I'm not Gary's therapist. And I've had my own, mental health issues. And maybe we'll go into them at some point. But that, I sat there and thought the same thing. Like, oh man, he's really having trouble. Okay. And this is why I just need to be here for you and whatever happens. But then it just took off from there.
I started finding the art. I started finding signs.
The real thing that turned my attention was when you pulled the Renaissance art in.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, actually, like,
it was undeniable, the signs we were seeing. Yeah.
The patterns that you're talking about, and the explanation is just, I didn't know, and I was interested. Because it's like, why are all these things showing up over and over again?
Asymmetry.
Yeah, and symmetry.
Yeah.
Both at the same time.
The deliberate asymmetry in the symmetry, like showing us. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, and I could show the viewers 100 images, and it would still be hard to get them to grasp the understanding of how deep this goes. But after the 1,000 images that we've seen and the different places that we found them and the connections between them, it is undeniable that there is some type of information that has been secretly, you know, they're embedding information in art, and at least they did. You know, I don't know about the last 200 to 500 years. It probably has continued, but this is one of the biggest mysteries that we have, actually, the question, right? The ultimate question. Has this information been passed through thousands and thousands of years and hidden the same way in all of these cultures, which is, it's just astounding to think that could be.
Yeah, I've moved away from the idea that this is some
almost a conspiracy. Might as well say it
it started out maybe like that, but I've moved away from that idea. I think it's, as we've developed our theories and our thinking, I think it's more to do with lost knowledge, where we lost the understanding of why we're doing it, but we're still doing it.
I agree with you. I mean, even Leonardo's Last Supper, Leonardo da Vinci did the Last Supper, right? His very famous Last Supper, right? And
I hope that's right, because I don't really know.
It is. Okay. I remember now. Because the whole DaVinci Code and all that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the Last Supper painting that Da Vinci did, this is going to sound wild to people if they know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I just want to point out here, like, if you're sitting there thinking we're totally crazy, I assure you, we are going to put more information out. Yeah. We're just not ready to.
Yeah, we're slowly warming up to exposing a lot of this stuff. But what I was going to say is that so everybody, the movie DaVinci Code came out, and everybody thinks there's a code in the DaVinci painting. I don't want to talk about
No,
listen, Code. No, we're not talking about DaVinci Code because of so as far as we understand, and if you ask me, right, is that the DaVinci Code is actually misunderstood completely. It's not DaVinci Code, right? But listen to this. The codes that we work on and the signs that we found in the art.
I don't want to call them codes. Well, I don't think they're codes, because I don't think anybody's trying to hide anything. Well, then I think that they are just carrying on
it's a message. It's a piece of information.
They're carrying a procedure on, but they don't understand why they're doing it. That's for me.
Well, remember that the meaning of the signage that we found, right? The main meaning of all of it is the inverse flipping and reversing. Okay?
Yes.
Where it's opposites on either end, essentially. And that's what's the sign is contained in all art. Like, we agree on that. That's what's seen. Now, I see what you're saying about it. It's carried on but not known. Absolutely.
They're doing it out of
copying.
For me, yeah, exactly. It's just copying something that was done before.
Yeah.
They don't understand why they were doing it, but they continue to do it because it's effective.
I'll say this, right? And I'm trying to express this to the viewers and to you, and you already understand this about me, but I'll say it this boldly. The Masons and the signs and symbology associated with all of the ancient times that we know about, from what we understand and the evidence we have, they're misunderstood. That all of the current understandings, or whatever is exposed publicly as the meaning for signs and symbols, the swastika, the 8, the David star, the yin yang, all of these symbols, in our opinion, are misunderstood, and that they're not the true meaning of them, and that they've been carried over. I mean, we know how important the yin yang is. You know, we know how powerful and predominant the swastika was across history and all that stuff prior to the Nazis and all that. but we don't know what they mean. But people have carried on the importance of them.
Right. And I want to stress that, let's just take the Masons, for example, right? There's all of this information out there.
I don't want to talk too much about the Masons.
No, I know. Right. But there's all of this conspiracy theory kind of stuff, if you want to call it that.
You go online
about,
a million videos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, the Masons have all this secret knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they have the secret knowledge. I think that they just understand that whatever these symbols are, they're meaningful. And so it's important to us to carry them forward.
Yeah.
Until the time when they are rediscovered.
And that makes sense.
Rather than they're hiding some secret thing and they have some secret knowledge or some secret power that we're...
Well, they know it's secret, but they don't know why, right?
Right.
And they
exactly.
They revere it, and
they revere it and they carry it forward.
And when you look at that example, it really ties into what you said about that the artist and the people, the scribes and everybody, they were carrying on the thing they knew was important, but they didn't know exactly why it was important. Same thing, like you're saying with the Masons. So the current understandings of all of those things are misunderstood, and we were talking about how our understanding of these symbols and signs is that all of the current understandings are wrong, essentially, and we're trying to put new, true understandings to them.
If we can.
Yeah.
Maybe. And I don't want to say that all of them are correct, because some may have been just... It's hard to decipher between what has been carried on and what has been created out of thin air.
I remember what I was trying to say there. Sorry, going back to the DaVinci painting of the Last Supper. The bold thing I have to say is that whatever code that DaVinci put into the Last Supper, I found discrepancies in it and errors in it, because we kind of know the sign or code that he's trying to put in there in terms of the inverse and the flipping and reversing, and like this code of numbers, let's say. The code we think. Yeah, the code that we know that predates his painting, it's partially in his painting, but it is as though, like you said, he was carrying on something and didn't know exactly what he was doing, because he took liberties in changing the painting in a little bit of way and changing the pattern that we see all the time, right? This sign. And when he changed it, he made it not accurate to the previous sign. So it's like there's things in the painting.
Intentionally or unintentionally, and this, I want to circle back to, because we veered pretty far off of the concept of where do ideas come from, but I think we can tie it back in here, right? Where did he get the inspiration for that painting? And why are the DaVinci Code type elements buried in there? And did he know what he was doing, or was he divinely inspired by some way and or was he just trying to reproduce, or did he just have this feeling like this is how it's supposed to be?
Well, due to the errors that I believe I found in it compared to the previous ones, I think it's right along the lines of what you said. He was copying something he saw in the past, took a little bit of liberty in changing it for his own style.
But it also felt right to him. Obviously, like he's a master. Yes, I think we can all agree that the balance that he puts into his work is very representative.
I'd be surprised
of the things that we talk about. So he must have had some feeling inside to make things the way that he did. But maybe he didn't have the full understanding. Just like I don't claim to have the full understanding. I don't think you do either.
No,
I think that we
have clues.
You gave me an example the other day that I want to bring up about a deer in the woods. And the deer doesn't know where they're going, but they smell something.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And they just try to follow that scent, and they're like, okay, I know there's something here. And that's how I feel. I think that's how you feel.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe how Da Vinci felt. I think that's maybe how Tesla and Einstein felt. It's just this, like, I smell something here.
But why?
And I'm going to follow it.
But why does it seem like... So one of the things that I really, what I feel like makes us different in our research is that we are so... What we feel is objective. You know, we
I'm careful about that.
well, what do you mean, like being objective?
I like to think that I'm objective, but I
That's why
don't
I'm trying to
I
preface
don't
it.
ever like assume that I try not to assume that I'm absolutely objective about everything, because
It's like a scientist saying it's not 100% true. You know,
Right.
it's so I understand that. That's just cautioning yourself, but and hedging your thoughts. But what I mean to say is just that.
but it's also the concept of I know nothing, accepting
Yeah.
and humbling yourself
Yeah.
and saying that I don't really know.
Yeah. You know, it's that it's the understanding that, you know, today we think one thing, but tomorrow it could be completely wrong, and we understand that, and it happened many times, and it's the key to learning, essentially. You know, like I've talked about before, when I was talking to all those people and writing the book, I began to develop the concept of, at the end of the week, I'm going to learn the half of the stuff I was wrong about and half of the stuff I was right about. I don't know what of this stuff is right, but eventually, and it's just an analogy for the understanding that over time and over a few days of more work and more research, I'm going to find out that the previous days, what was not true, what was working, what didn't work, and build on it.
And man, we went down so many rabbit holes together that we kind of just eventually decided, we just need to throw this out. There's more important things for us to work on.
I mean, I just did it with the computer 3 days ago. I was designing a computer from scratch and instantly say, you know what, this is going to be a side. This is like 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road. I don't need to be doing this. I need to learn some previous things first.
Yeah, there's more fundamental concepts.
There's never that moment when we're working together where we're on a different page, essentially. And that page is just basically like 2020 sight. We're trying to have the most clear view of an accurate view of what we're looking at. And we've said this before, it's never about who's right or what's right, or never about who's right, especially with us, right? It's about finding out what is right. And it doesn't matter. I just want to know what's true, you know? And I think me and you have both experienced an ego death too. I really think so. I think that's what makes us a lot of times in line with our thinking and with our work and everything. Like, there's not a lot of ego to us.
Yeah, and I don't even try to communicate that to people.
It's hard
because
to understand.
If you haven't, it's just one of those.
You haven't been humbled by the universe, right?
Right. You have to be humbled, and trying to convince somebody, and you can't force it. It's just like telling somebody the meditation thing, right?
Yeah. Psst,
Drop. Oh, hey, Beasley, come on.
Beasley.
Come on. Oh my goodness. We got to cut that out.
Yeah, we get it.
But yeah, it's just the same thing about trying to humble yourself. You can't explain that to somebody. It just happens.
Yeah.
You can try to put it in a methodical approach. I think the Hermetics did a great job of trying to systemize that.
Mm-hmm.
They went a little far with some of the last principles that I don't know, but I mean,
you can see the time it was kind of made in
right,
a little
right.
bit, just barely a hint of it.
But you can see they're trying to put a procedural effort into it.
And so that's another thing going into the thinking about where thoughts come from. When this book that we began writing, after I had the first understanding with the Fulcrum, we wrote, there was 300 pages of that book written before we found the Hermetic principles.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I mean, imagine, viewers, that we're sitting there writing a book for a year and doing this insane psychological research and like testing and we're delving into everything. At that point, I was breaking down a periodic table. We found quaternions.
We were going into crazy stuff.
So every day was something different. And it wasn't until a year later that we found Hermetic principles, and I was like, Dave, look at this. And it was matched our book. I mean, it was the 7 Hermetic principles are 95% dead in line with the understandings I got from the universe during Enlightenment. And it just made me like, I could trust those things because I know they came from the same place that I got my information. And so in terms of where ideas come from, the person that wrote those books got their ideas came from the same place that my ideas came from, because the ideas matched perfectly without ever knowing prior knowledge of them, So it's undeniable what is out there in terms of ideas coming into your head, and the fact that we wrote the Hermetic Principles without knowing it existed is like our proof. It's one of the first proofs, I think, for me at least. It was one of the tipping points in understanding that this has happened to other people, and there's a body of understanding that is being passed, you know.
Yeah, and I think we probably wrap it up there on this discussion. But I think it has opened the door to some future discussions.
Well, I think I'd like to go into, you know, the later states, you know, how we got here, basically, you know, we got to the point where the book got written, and then it was really when I began finding the imagery, right? This began to have you interested.
That's where I turned.
Yeah, that's where you began to think there's something here, right? And then it was right around in the midst of doing that imagery that I found the manuscript, because I woke up one day and decided I would try. It's kind of how I was feeling at the time. And I watched that video, and I found I clipped that out and searched.
You might have just given up a little too much information there that we might need to cut out. But okay.
Yes. All right. So, yeah. All right. So, sorry about that. You're right. But so I found an image on, led me to our manuscript by doing a Google search, and I cut that out too. Wow. Yeah. We can't give out no information about the thing. But, when we found the manuscript, it was numbers. It was proof in numbers, and that is undeniable. Basically, like it's like finding out that 2 + 3 is 6 instead of 5, and
that's almost what we have determined.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this just to tease everybody: we discovered a non-ambiguous meaning to numerals. I mean, that's one of the biggest. It's a foundational piece in understanding what we're doing, is that there is an underlying foundation to numbers, and the reason that the characters look the way they do.
Yeah.
Big shit. But
all right, let's leave it with that.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, hey, thanks for opening up and telling, you know, part of your story there.
Yeah, we'll go more
into
it.
It's really foundational to what we do, and people need to know it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard to talk about, and someday maybe I'll tell mine.
Yeah.
But
well, it's hard because, you know, even with you, right? I would never be doing this type of work right now unless we had credibility in tangible projects that we're working on. You know what I mean? So like, it's okay. We have to have credibility, I think, before we start releasing, you know, really deep thoughts and inner workings of what we're going on with. You know what I mean? Because it is absolutely, you know, insane to think about what we're doing. And if you don't see it from the perspective of, you know, the reasonable everything that we're working on, and you just hear, oh, we did this and we're thinking of this and we're doing that.
If anybody thinks the only thing we've done is painted a room and decorated it and set up some cameras, you're so wrong.
Yeah.
This is just an example of what we do and how we do things.
And we're trying to build a platform to present this stuff, you know, and slowly, you know, figure out where this goes. Like we talked about, where we don't, you know, the ideas that we have about what we're doing next week or next month, they're not necessarily that planned out. You know, we know that we want to communicate our projects to people, share our ideas with people, and that's kind of what this is. But it is going to be turning into a lot of show and tell, I think.
I think so too. And, you know, I think we're just going to continue to follow our path, and I hope that everybody watching follows their path.
Yeah. And
I wish all of you, you know, the best and love out there. And yeah, good episode.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, man. I love you.
All right. Love you too. Peace.